Good afternoon from Portsmouth Historic Dockyard, and I've just arrived here on a GWR service all the way from Cardiff. So if you haven't watched that video, I will put a link in the corner so that you can go back and watch it. But for the final leg of my 3-vlog day today, I will be heading back up to London with South Western Railway on their 4:45 service. This will take me up the Portsmouth Direct Line, which is a line I haven't actually done before, and I thought it would be interesting to have a look at the route, see what it's like, and yeah, it should be a nice, enjoyable journey. Today the weather has been pretty rough. It's been pretty grey and rainy, so it hasn't been the best, but since I've arrived in Portsmouth, the sun has come out, and just fingers crossed it stays that way for the journey back up to the capital. So let's head over to Portsmouth Harbour station on the pier and we can get this video underway. Welcome to Portsmouth Harbour, one of Britain's most historic waterfront stations and a gateway to both naval heritage and coastal travel. Having done my introduction, I decided to head over to the station where we passed the mighty HMS Warrior across the water, launched in 1860 as one of the Navy's first iron-hulled warships and now preserved as a fascinating museum, well worth a visit if you have the time. Unfortunately though, today I have a train to catch, so it's onwards into the main harbour building for me. The station here was opened in 1876 as the terminus of the Portsmouth Direct Line's waterside extension, superseding an earlier dock on the same site by the name of Albert Pier, before being electrified and rebuilt in its current form by the Southern Railway in 1937. Today, the station has a total of 4 operational platforms and is an important transport terminal with a bus interchange and ferry services across to Gosport and the Isle of Wight, the latter being operated by Whitelink with their 2 high-speed catamarans. But back to the trains, and my 4:45 departure up to the capital was ready and waiting on platform 5 in the form of 2 South Western Railway Class 450s. Built between 2002 and 2006, this fleet of 127 units operates suburban, out-suburban and regional services from London Waterloo, including today's route up the Portsmouth Direct Line alongside the Class 444s, South Western's intercity style units. It's also worth noting that whilst there are no overhead lines, these trains are still electric, running off the third rail system uniquely used across southern England, but more on that later. I've now made it to the end of platform 5 here at Portsmouth Harbour, and that is my South Western Railway service behind me there to take me up to London Waterloo in about 15 minutes time. So it's worth mentioning at this point what is probably the best thing about today's journey, and that is the price. I paid just £8.90 with a rail card for my ticket up to Waterloo, which I think is absolutely excellent value. And there's another sort of hack. Obviously I'm sort of starting my journey here at Portsmouth Harbour. I haven't come from anywhere, but if you're starting or finishing your journey on the Isle of Wight, you can actually buy through tickets from London and the mainland onto the island itself, which include the ferries that you will have seen earlier. And if you have a rail card, that can save you lots of money considering the prices of the ferries and the trains separately. Obviously I'm not going to the Isle of Wight today, but if you are, that's worth bearing in mind. Anyway, I'm going to jump on board the train. It looks very empty, so I'm going to try and find myself a good seat and enjoy this journey up to the capital. So jumping on board, I decided to sit at the front of the train where it's almost empty, with seating laid out in a denser 2+3 configuration, giving a mix of airline style seats as well as larger bays of 4 and 6, which, whilst not the best for comfort, does increase your chance of getting a seat during rush hour. And with departure up the incline from Harbour Station bang on time, let's have a very brief look at today's route to the capital. Starting from almost exactly sea level, our train soon climbs up to the city centre stop of Portsmouth and Southsea, continuing to wind its way across Portsea Island to reach Havant. From here, we leave behind the West Coastway line to Brighton, heading into the heart of the South Downs via Petersfield and Hazelmere. With a further stop at Godalming, we reach the city of Guildford before joining the South Western Main Line for the final non-stop run into Waterloo at Woking. Scheduled journey time to cover the 73-mile route is 1 hour and 37 minutes, giving our Class 450 an average speed of 45 miles per hour. Back on board and having a closer look at the seats themselves, I found them to be reasonably comfy despite the lack of armrests and tables, featuring a standard plug socket as well. Not too bad for a commuter train and perfectly adequate for today's journey. Slowly winding our way along the narrow rail corridor, our service soon reaches the ornate Portsmouth and Southsea station, the main railway station serving the city. The buildings here date from an 1866 rebuild of the original 1847 terminus, with the station now featuring 4 platforms, the 2 high-level ones seen here being used for through trains to and from the harbour. Just 3 minutes later, we pull into Fratton, one of 4 railway stations on Portsea Island, and actually the busiest of them all, despite Portsmouth and Southsea often being considered the principal station. It was also here that the short-lived Southsea Railway branch line began, though this was closed in 1914 due to competition from the electric tramways. At this point, we had already crossed back over to the mainland from Portsea Island and were pulling into the station at Havant. Originally opened by the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway, the station soon became an important junction upon the opening of the Portsmouth Direct Line, with yet another addition not long after this in the form of the popular Hayling Island branch. Though this eventually succumbed to closure in 1963, the lines to both Brighton and Woking are of course still in operation today. Arriving at Petersfield, we are now truly on the original Portsmouth Railway's territory, with the line opening here in stages down from Woking throughout the 1840s and 1850s. Since then, the line has continued to develop, with the Southern Railway bringing third rail electrification in 1937 after the successful implementation of previous schemes between London and Brighton and Hastings. More recently, the line has undergone a huge £129 million signalling upgrade, involving the installation of 90 new signals and closure of the remaining 3 signal boxes just after this was filmed in October 2025. Arriving at Haslemere, we catch a glimpse of one such structure, which was opened in 1895 and is the only surviving box of its kind. Although its operational history has now come to an end, the Grade 2 listed building is actually set to become a working museum, beautifully restored to its former 1930s glory, so that's one to definitely revisit when the work is complete. Having passed through Farncombe, we soon cross paths with the 45-mile long North Downs line, which runs from Reading in Berkshire to Redhill in Surrey. After joining it at Shelford Junction, our Class 450 soon cruises into one of the 7 operational platforms at Guildford, where we see one of South Western Railway's remaining Class 455s waiting to leave for London via the new Guildford line. Built over 40 years ago in 1982, these are now some of the oldest operational electric trains in Britain and are set to retire imminently in December 2025. From Guildford, we briefly pass the junction for the aforementioned commuter line to Waterloo via Cobham, before soon reaching the South West Main Line from Weymouth at Woking. Today, Woking acts as a very busy rail interchange, so with it being rush hour, I decided to sit back and enjoy the rest of the evening's journey in central London as the sun slowly began to set. Soon, our South Western Railway service approaches the famous Clapham Junction railway station, a major transport hub which, as well as being the UK's busiest station for interchanges between services, is also said to be the busiest in Europe when it comes to volume of rail traffic using it. A truly incredible operation. From here, it's not long to our final terminus stop as we join several other rail arteries from destinations across the south, including Brighton, Reading, Dover and Ramsgate, each winding their way through the maze of skyscrapers and tower blocks. For us though, we finally begin to make the approach to the Grand Station at Waterloo, the third busiest in Britain, concluding today's trip up from Portsmouth via the Direct Line. Although on one of their commuter trains, it still proved to be an enjoyable journey with the SWR, so with that, I had just enough time to alight and summarise today's vlog before finally making my way home after a long day of filming. Just like that, I've made it to a very busy London Waterloo station here on a Saturday evening, concluding my journey from Portsmouth Harbour with South Western Railway, SWR, which have been recently nationalised under GBR, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But for my overall thoughts on today's journey, it was actually quite relaxing. The weather wasn't too bad, it was nice and sunny in Portsmouth to kick things off. And obviously it was quiet when I got on, and from Woking onwards it was full and standing, but that's to be expected on a Saturday evening. Everyone's coming into the capital for a night out, I presume. So thank you for watching, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will hopefully see you for my next adventure.